Usually, when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there is a very clear expectation, of precision.
Right, like it's a science.
Exactly. It is like engineering.
Yeah.
Imagine you fall down and your arm hurts. So you go to the hospital, and the doctor takes an X-ray. You look at the image, and well, there it is. A jagged white line right on the bone.
And it's obvious, right?
Yes, the doctor points to it and says, your arm is broken.
It is very simple. The situation is completely binary. I mean, it is either broken or it is not broken.
Right. It is clean, and in a way, it is comforting. We really like problems to be visible.
Oh, definitely. We like things to be easy to categorize.
But then you step away from medicine, you step into the world of human relationships and social communication.
That changes everything.
It really does.
Yeah.
Suddenly, that X-ray machine just does not work anymore. When you make a mistake or when you hurt someone's feelings, the landscape is not clear at all.
No, not at all. It is murky. It is dark and confusing.
It is the absolute definition of, well, diagnostic muddy waters. You cannot just look at a picture and see exactly what is broken between two people.
Right. You can't just point to a screen.
Exactly. So welcome, everyone. We are doing a very special deep dive today. And this deep dive is designed specifically for you, the English language learner.
We are so glad you are here with us.
We know that listening to native speakers can sometimes feel really overwhelming. People speak very fast.
They do, and the vocabulary can be very complex.
But not today. Today, we have a clear mission for you. Our conversation will be deliberately slow.
Very slow and very clear.
Right. We are going to use simple, easy-to-understand words. We want you to follow along without stress.
And we want you to master this material. We will break down these complex ideas into small, bite-sized pieces.
So you can just focus on learning. Now, our topic today is a social skill that, well, every single person on Earth has to use eventually.
Oh, absolutely. It is a very necessary skill.
But it makes almost everyone feel incredibly uncomfortable. We are talking about the art of apologizing.
Saying you are sorry.
Yes. And in English, apologizing is not just about memorizing the words, I am sorry.
No. That is only a very small fraction of the process. A true, effective apology involves the tone of your voice. It involves knowing your audience, meaning you must understand the specific person you are speaking to.
Right. The context matters.
Exactly. And most importantly, it involves the actual physical actions you take after the words leave your mouth.
So by the end of this deep dive, you will have a complete vocabulary toolkit.
A very useful toolkit.
Yes, you will have the exact phrases you need to save your own personal and professional relationships when you make a mistake.
And we all make mistakes.
We do. To learn these tools, we are going to look at a high-stakes, real-life, dramatic scenario from our sources.
This is what you would call a red alert situation.
A red alert, high danger, high stress.
Exactly. We have a husband who is extremely late for a very important anniversary dinner.
And before you can fix a mistake, you must accurately name the mistake. You must measure how bad the situation is.
Right, because you cannot apply the right solution if you do not understand the gravity of the problem.
So let us analyze the anatomy of this massive delay. We really need to look at the details here.
The details are very important.
The husband in our scenario is named David. Now, David was supposed to be home from work at exactly 7 o'clock p.m.
7 o'clock sharp.
Right, but he does not arrive at 7. The clock ticks to 8 o'clock, then 9 o'clock.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he finally walks through the front door at 9:30 p.m.
He is 2.5 hours late.
And this is not just a regular Tuesday evening, This is their anniversary.
It is the yearly celebration of their marriage, so the stakes are incredibly high.
Let us paint the picture of the damage inside the house. The wife, Jennifer, has been waiting.
And the source text tells us she has been sitting in the dark.
Sitting in the dark. That is rough.
That image alone tells you everything about her emotional state. I mean, sitting in the dark means she has stopped trying.
Yeah.
She is not reading a book. She is not watching television. She is sitting in silence, feeling the weight of his absence.
And the details surrounding her make it even worse. The food she prepared is cold. The wine she poured is warm.
What a disaster.
It is. And they had a highly desired restaurant reservation later in the evening. It was a reservation that took weeks to secure.
And because he is 2.5 hours late, that reservation is completely lost.
Exactly. So when David opens that door and sees Jennifer sitting in the dark with the cold food and the warm wine,
He cannot just say, I made an error.
No, that word is entirely wrong for this moment. An error is a sterile word.
Right. You make an error when you spell a word wrong on a document.
Or you make a calculation error in mathematics. But this situation is much bigger, much more emotional.
It requires a specific English vocabulary phrase to capture the true damage.
And the phrase we need to introduce here is screw up. Let me spell that out. S-C-R-E-W space. U-P screw up.
This is an incredibly common phrase in modern English. It is an informal phrase.
Right, you use it in conversation. You would not use it in formal academic writing.
But you need to understand that even though it is informal, it is a very strong, heavy way to say that a significant mistake was made.
Let us contrast screw up with formal language to see why it works so well.
Okay, imagine David walked through the door, looked at his furious wife, and said, "I committed an unfortunate oversight."
Oh, wow. If he said that, she would probably walk right out the door.
Exactly. It sounds completely unnatural.
It fails because it sounds like a lawyer reading a contract.
Right. When you use highly formal language in a deeply personal, emotional situation, you fail to take real responsibility.
Formal language creates distance. It sounds like you are hiding behind a wall of vocabulary.
But when you say, "I really screwed up," the distance disappears.
It feels casual, yes, but more importantly, it feels real. It shows true ownership of the mess.
You are standing in the wreckage of the evening and admitting, "I created this disaster."
You will also hear this phrase used frequently in the workplace. Our sources provide some great examples of this.
Yes. Imagine you are working on a major project and you accidentally delete a highly important file from the shared computer drive.
Or imagine you write a very private, sensitive email and you accidentally send it to the wrong person in the office.
That is a nightmare. In those moments, you would walk into your manager's office and say, "I really screwed up."
By using that specific phrase, you signal to your manager that you understand the severe reality of the problem.
It strips away all the corporate talk and shows genuine, heavy regret.
Wait a minute, though. I want to look at David's situation again.
Okay, let's look at it.
We are saying he needs to admit he screwed up, but let us look at the reason he was 2.5 hours late.
Right. The source text gives us the full story of his evening. It was not a quiet evening at the office.
Far from it. David had a massive, chaotic emergency at work. A major water pipe burst.
It broke open and flooded the office server room.
And that room holds all the critical computer data for the entire company.
A flooded server room is a catastrophic event for a business.
Exactly. David was forced to stay. He had to help the IT team physically save the computers and the data.
And during this massive emergency, his mobile phone died. The battery completely drained.
Yes, he was trapped in a flooded room, fighting a crisis, with no way to send a message to his wife.
It is a terrible situation.
So here is my pushback. Since this was a true emergency,
Right.
and since it was clearly not his fault that the building's plumbing failed, is it really fair to demand that he say, "I screwed up"?
I see what you mean.
It feels like the building screwed up, not David.
That is the logical way to look at it, yes. But human relationships do not operate on pure logic. In English relationship dynamics, the phrase "screw up" often focuses entirely on the impact rather than the intention or the cause.
The impact. Okay, explain how that works in this scenario.
When David says, "I screwed up," he is not saying, "I personally broke the water pipe."
Right, he didn't break it.
He is acknowledging the final impact his absence had on his wife. The reality is, Jennifer sat in the dark for hours.
Her special anniversary night was ruined.
Exactly. That is the impact.
So in this cultural context, apologizing is about validating the other person's lived experience.
Yes.
It is not a court of law where you prove whose fault the broken pipe was.
Precisely. You can have the greatest, most valid reason in the world, but the other person is still hurt.
Yeah.
Taking ownership by saying, "I screwed up," bridges the gap between his chaotic evening and her painful evening.
It says, regardless of the crazy water pipe, I see your pain and I take responsibility for my role in this situation.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. We have accurately named and measured the mistake. It is a major screw-up.
A very big one.
Now we move to the exact words David needs to use to address his angry wife. You have to speak very carefully to avoid making a bad situation worse.
This is where we discuss the weight of words, the specific vocabulary of a strong apology.
Let us examine the apology language David uses in the source scenario. He looks at Jennifer and says, "I am so incredibly sorry."
Listen to the structure of that sentence. "I'm so incredibly sorry."
The crucial word there is incredibly. This is an intensifier.
An intensifier is a word that modifies the next word. It makes the emotion stronger, deeper, and more severe.
Right. In English, the true strength of an apology relies heavily on these intensifier words.
The source text gives us a great list of these words.
You can say you are incredibly sorry. You can say you are sincerely sorry.
Or deeply
Or
sorry.
genuinely sorry.
If you simply walk into a room and say, I am sorry, it often falls flat. It can feel like a chore.
Yeah, it feels like something you are only saying because society forces you to say it.
Exactly.
I like to compare using an intensifier to adding a heavy weight to a scale. Think about the word sorry, all by itself. If you just say sorry, the word floats in the air like a light feather. The other person barely feels it land.
It lacks substance.
But when you add a word like incredibly or genuinely, you are attaching a heavy iron weight to that feather.
That's a great visual.
When you drop that sentence, it lands with a loud bang. The other person actually feels the physical weight of your regret.
The intensifier grounds the apology in reality.
And right after delivering that heavy intensified apology, our source text introduces a vital conflict resolution phrase.
A power phrase.
Yes, the phrase is, I hear you.
I hear you. We really need to break down the meaning of this phrase very carefully.
Because it is not literal.
No, it has nothing to do with the physical act of hearing sound.
Literally, I hear you just means my ears are receiving the sound waves coming from your mouth.
Right, but that is not what David means when he says it to Jennifer.
In English communication, I hear you is a psychological tool. It is used to de-escalate an argument.
It lowers the temperature of the room, it calms the anger.
When you look at an angry person and say, I hear you, you are delivering a highly complex emotional message in just 3 short words.
You are saying, I understand the reason behind your anger. I recognize the pain you are feeling.
And I validate your emotions.
Validation is the key concept here. To validate someone means you confirm that their feelings are real, correct, and acceptable.
You are telling them, you have every right to be angry right now. I am not going to fight your emotions.
When people are furious, their primary desire is to be understood.
Yes.
If you try to argue with their anger, the anger multiplies. But if you sincerely say, I hear you, the anger often deflates.
The fight leaves them because they feel their pain has been recognized.
But these words, even the heavy intensifiers and the power phrases, will completely fail if your body language does not match.
That is so true. The sources emphasize the critical role of nonverbal communication.
Nonverbal communication is everything you say without opening your mouth.
Imagine David walks in. He says, I am incredibly sorry. I hear you. But while he speaks, he is staring down at his mobile phone.
Oh, that is terrible.
Yeah.
Or he's checking his watch.
Or he's looking over her shoulder at the television.
The apology is instantly dead.
It is worse than dead. It becomes an insult. It tells the other person that you do not actually care.
Saying sorry while looking at a screen makes the listener feel entirely uncared for.
Sincerity requires a very specific physical performance. The source text outlines the requirements clearly. First, you must have direct eye contact.
You cannot look away. You must hold their gaze.
Second, you need a soft tone of voice. You cannot shout an apology.
No, and you cannot use a sharp or defensive tone. The voice must be gentle and controlled.
Finally, you must maintain a serious facial expression. A major screw-up is not the time for a casual smile.
You cannot laugh nervously. Your face must reflect the gravity of the words deeply sorry.
So we have the anatomy of the screw-up. We have the heavy words, the validating phrases, and the correct body language.
This is a solid foundation.
But this is where the dynamic becomes incredibly dangerous. Even with perfect words and perfect eye contact, the apology will crash and burn if the listener believes you are just trying to avoid the blame.
This leads us to explore the complicated territory of excuses versus ownership.
We need to look at how different cultures handle the concept of blame.
We must understand the profound difference between giving a reason and giving an excuse.
The source text describes the word excuse as a double-edged sword.
Let us explain that idiom. A double-edged sword is a weapon with sharp blades on both sides.
If you swing it, you might cut your enemy, but you might also cut yourself.
It represents a tool or a situation that has both helpful and deeply harmful consequences.
Let us look back at Jennifer's reaction in the story. David explains the entire situation.
Right. He tells her about the broken water pipe, the flooded server room, the frantic IT team, and the dead phone battery.
He lays out all the facts, and Jennifer's response is very revealing.
She says, "You always seem to have a perfectly logical excuse."
She uses the phrase perfectly logical excuse, and, well, she is not giving him a compliment.
Not at all. She is deeply frustrated.
We need to analyze why. I mean, David gave her a valid reason. The pipe actually burst. It is a fact.
So why does this factual reason feel like a toxic excuse to Jennifer?
Because in English-speaking relationship dynamics, an excuse is perceived as an attempt to shift the blame away from yourself.
Shifting the blame.
When you provide an excuse, the listener translates your words. They hear you saying, "This situation is not my fault, and because it is not my fault, I do not need to change my future behavior."
In this moment, Jennifer does not care about the office plumbing. Her core issue is that she feels like an afterthought.
Right. She feels that David always prioritizes his job over their marriage.
So when David talks about the pipe, she hears him deflecting the blame.
She hears him saying, "Work is out of my control, therefore you are not allowed to be mad at me."
The source material introduces a couple of very common English idioms that highlight how much Western culture dislikes excuses.
The first one is a phrase you will hear constantly in business. "I don't want excuses. I want results."
I don't want excuses, I want results. Another common variation is simply commanding someone to stop making excuses.
What these idioms show is a cultural expectation. In many Western English-speaking environments, society expects you to admit failure without mounting a defense.
You're expected to say, I failed, and put a period at the end of the sentence.
No, but, no, because. Just pure ownership of the failure.
The source text dives into what it calls the culture of sorry. And it is fascinating to see how this approach changes depending on where you are in the world.
The text specifically brings up the famous Canadian stereotype. A stereotype is a widely held, simplified idea of the typical characteristics of a person or group.
And the stereotype for Canadians is that they apologize instinctively for basic social politeness.
Instinctively means they do it without thinking. It is an automatic reflex.
The classic example is this. If you are walking down the street in Canada and you accidentally bump into a Canadian person,
Right. The Canadian will likely say, "Sorry," immediately, even though you bumped into them.
they did nothing wrong, but they apologize anyway.
In that specific cultural context, the word sorry has nothing to do with guilt. It is not an admission of a severe mistake.
It is simply a social lubricant. It is a tool designed to keep the atmosphere chill.
Chill is a great informal word for relaxed and calm. The Canadian sorry just smooths over the tiny bumps of daily life.
But we must contrast this polite, easy sorry with how apologizing operates in other global cultures, particularly in business settings.
Yes. In many cultures, apologizing is viewed as a dangerous sign of weakness.
In some cultures, saying the words I am sorry causes a severe loss of face.
The concept of losing face means losing respect, dignity, or social status in the eyes of your peers.
In a culture where face is critical, if an employee makes a significant error at work, they will work silently and tirelessly to fix the error.
They will solve the problem.
But they will avoid explicitly saying the words I am sorry, because vocalizing the apology brings public shame.
Let us pause and think about the English learner who is listening to us right now. Imagine you grew up in a culture where saying sorry at work causes a terrible loss of face.
It brings shame.
But your career has brought you to a Western English-speaking office. Maybe you work in London or Toronto or Chicago.
How do you survive?
Because in this new Western office, you are suddenly expected to loudly take ownership and admit your faults.
That is a massive cultural bridge to cross.
Yeah.
To survive and thrive, the learner has to completely reframe what the apology means in their own mind.
Reframe, to look at the same concept from a completely different angle.
Exactly. In a Western office environment, admitting a mistake is not a loss of face. In fact, it achieves the exact opposite result.
Admitting a fault quickly and taking full ownership actually builds your face. It enhances your professional reputation.
So standing up in a meeting and saying, I screwed up, makes the manager respect you more.
Yes, because Western business culture places a very high value on transparency and rapid problem solving.
When you say, I made a mistake, I own it, and here is my plan to fix it, your colleagues see you as confident, honest, and reliable.
In the West, hiding a mistake or blaming others is what causes a devastating loss of face.
That is a crucial cultural distinction to understand. To help navigate this, the source text provides a clear formula.
It outlines the 3 pillars of a Western English-speaking complete apology.
Think of this like a building supported by 3 strong, distinct columns. If one column is missing, the entire building collapses.
Let us walk through these 3 pillars. Pillar number 1 is the statement.
The statement is the foundational step. You must clearly and explicitly say the words, I am sorry.
You cannot just imply it. You must vocalize the regret.
Pillar number 2 is the ownership.
The ownership requires you to say, it was my fault. And as we just discussed, this must be done without attaching any excuses.
You do not blame the broken pipe. You do not blame the traffic. You do not blame the complicated software.
You take the blame entirely on your own shoulders.
And finally, pillar number 3, the restitution.
The restitution. This is the action plan. This means telling the injured party, here is exactly how I will make it up to you.
This brings us to the ultimate test of the Western apology. Without restitution, the first 2 pillars are meaningless.
The only way David is going to survive his ruined anniversary is through this final step. Let us introduce the essential restorative language phrase, make it up to you.
Make it up to you. This phrase acts as a reset button for a relationship.
It means you recognize you caused a deficit and you are offering a positive action to balance out the negative action.
The source text gives us a great low-stakes example of how this works. Imagine you are talking with a friend and you accidentally spoil the ending of a movie they're planning to watch.
You ruin the surprise.
That is a highly annoying mistake.
It is. So you say you are sorry, but then you offer restitution.
You say, I will buy the popcorn and the tickets for the next movie we see.
You balance the negative action of ruining the movie with the positive action of buying the snacks. That is how you make it up to them.
The source text uses a very famous English idiom to explain why this restitution is an absolute requirement. The idiom is, talk is cheap.
Talk is cheap. It is a short, sharp phrase. It means that saying words is the easiest thing in the world.
Anyone can open their mouth and say, I am sorry. It costs no money, it takes no time, and it requires no physical effort.
Because talk is cheap, actions are the only things that hold real value. Actions require sacrifice.
Let us look at David's restitution. What action does he take to prove to Jennifer that his talk is not cheap?
He goes for a very large gesture. The sources tell us he books a 3-day mountain spa weekend for the following week.
A spa is a resort focused on relaxation, peace, and recovery.
And he adds a very specific, crucial detail to this trip. No phones, no work emails, just the 2 of them, completely disconnected from the outside world.
This is smart restitution because he's directly addressing her core complaint. Her complaint was that work was always his priority.
His restitution physically removes work from the equation for 3 days.
But Jennifer is not quite ready to let him off the hook easily. She adds her own demand to the restitution.
She accepts the mountain spa trip, but she responds by saying, fine, that is a good start, but you are also doing the dishes and the laundry for the next month.
He has to wash the dirty plates and clean the dirty clothes every day for 30 days.
And David, knowing how badly he screwed up, immediately says, deal. He accepts the price of his mistake.
Once a promise of restitution is made, you need language to enforce it. The text introduces a highly useful phrase for this. I'll hold you to that.
I'll hold you to that. This is a firm, fair way to ensure someone actually follows through on their commitment.
Imagine a colleague says they will finish their part of the presentation by Friday morning. You look at them and say, I'll hold you to that.
It means I am registering this promise in my mind, and I fully expect you to deliver. There will be consequences if you forget.
It functions like a verbal contract.
Yeah.
Now, before we leave the story of David and Jennifer, there's another phrase Jennifer used earlier in the evening that we must highlight.
When David first walked in the door at 9:30, she used heavy sarcasm.
Sarcasm is a difficult concept for language learners. It is when you say the exact opposite of what you actually mean, using a mocking or bitter tone of voice to show your irritation.
She looked at her husband, who was sweating and 2.5 hours late, and she said, look who finally decided to show up.
Show up. This is a standard phrasal verb. In its literal sense, it simply means to arrive at a location, to appear.
But her usage is entirely sarcastic. When someone is terribly late, saying, look who finally decided to show up, is a sharp, biting insult.
It is not a friendly welcome. The hidden meaning is, you are unacceptably late, you are selfish, and I am furious.
It is critical for English learners to recognize this sarcastic tone. You do not want to smile and say thank you when someone uses this phrase against you.
You must hear the anger underneath the casual words.
We have spent a lot of time discussing massive high-stakes mistakes, ruined anniversaries, flooded offices, deep emotional pain.
But life is also full of tiny, meaningless mistakes. What happens when the error is just a small, everyday accident?
For tiny accidents, you do not book a 3-day mountain spa trip. You do not stare deeply into someone's eyes and say, I am incredibly genuinely sorry.
That would be a huge overreaction.
Exactly. For the small things, we use a completely different approach. The source text introduces our final phrase, my bad.
My bad. This is the classic, informal, everyday English mini apology.
Let us use the examples from the text. Imagine you are in a crowded office elevator. It is full of people.
You step backwards and you accidentally crush someone's toe with your shoe.
Or you are at a desk and you accidentally pick up your coworker's pen thinking it is yours.
These are minor social bumps. You have to acknowledge them, but you must match the vocabulary to the size of the crime.
Let us explore why my bad is the correct choice and why saying forgive me is a terrible choice.
But let us role-play the terrible choice. You step hard on my toe in the elevator.
You turn around, look deeply and intensely into my eyes, lower your voice, and whisper with a tragic expression, forgive me.
I would be deeply uncomfortable. I would probably want to leave the elevator immediately.
It is incredibly weird. It is far too dramatic. The emotion does not match the physical event.
The phrase forgive me is reserved for when you break someone's heart. It is for betrayals. It is not for a clumsy moment with a shoe.
For the shoe, or the stolen pen, the physical performance is totally different. You simply wave your hand a little bit, give a quick polite smile, and say, oops, my bad.
It is the culturally perfect choice for low-stakes situations. It acknowledges the tiny error, it claims brief ownership, but it keeps the atmosphere light and allows everyone to instantly move on with their day.
Before we conclude our deep dive, I want to offer one more analogy to help tie all these concepts together, especially the crucial idea of restitution.
Analogies are very helpful.
I want you to imagine that every relationship you have is a bank account.
A bank account, like where you deposit your salary and save your money.
Yes. When you are kind to someone, when you listen to them, when you remember their birthday, you are making a deposit into the relationship bank account.
The balance goes up. The relationship is wealthy and healthy.
But when you make a mistake, when you screw up, you are making a withdrawal. You are pulling value out of the account.
Being 2.5 hours late for an anniversary is a massive withdrawal.
A devastating withdrawal. David almost emptied the entire account in one night. The balance was at 0.
So restitution, the mountain spa weekend, the month of washing dishes and doing laundry, is simply his attempt to make a massive deposit.
He has to put value back into the account so it does not go negative and close permanently.
The 3 pillars work perfectly with this analogy. The statement and the ownership are like handing the person a receipt acknowledging the missing funds.
But the restitution is handing them the actual cash to replace what was lost.
That is exactly right. Words are the receipt. Action is the currency.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener? Let us take a moment to briefly recap the powerful vocabulary toolkit you have acquired today.
You now know how to accurately measure a mistake. You understand the difference between a sterile error and a messy, real screw-up.
You know how to add heavy gravity to your apologies.
Yeah.
You can use intensifiers like incredibly, deeply, and genuinely, so your words do not float away like a feather.
You know how to use the psychological power phrase, I hear you, to validate someone's anger and de-escalate an argument.
Yeah.
And you know how to support those words with serious, direct body language.
You understand the danger of a perfectly logical excuse. You know that in Western culture, a reason can sound like shifting the blame.
You understand the cultural spectrum from the instinctual Canadian sorry to the Western office environment where owning your failure actually builds your professional reputation.
You have mastered the 3 pillars of a complete apology: the statement, the ownership, and the restitution.
And finally, you know how to use restitution to make it up to you, whether that means buying movie popcorn or booking a spa trip.
You can enforce promises with, I'll hold you to that. You can recognize the sharp sarcasm of finally decided to show up, and you know exactly when to just wave your hand and say, my bad.
It is a comprehensive set of tools for navigating human imperfection.
We want to connect this directly to your own life. As you go about your week, we encourage you to reflect on your own history. Think deeply about the biggest mistake you ever had to apologize for.
Picture that moment in your mind. What specific words did you choose to use?
Did you accidentally offer an excuse, trying to protect yourself? Or did you stand in the mess and take full, heavy ownership?
And most importantly, did you successfully make it up to that person through action? Did you replenish the relationship bank account?
It is a challenging but necessary exercise in self-reflection.
It is.
And as we finish our deep dive today, I want to leave you with a final lingering thought. A provocative question for you to ponder on your own.
What is the final thought?
We have established today that talk is cheap. We proved that the most important, vital part of the complete Western apology is the physical action you take to fix the damage, the restitution.
Right.
So, I want you to consider this. Could there ever be a scenario where saying the words, "I am sorry," is actually the completely wrong thing to do?
The wrong thing.
Could there be a situation where the damage is so severe that any words spoken would only cause more pain and pure, silent, sustained action is the absolute only way to save the relationship?
That is a profound idea to consider. A situation where silence is heavier and more healing than an apology.
Something for you to mull over. We want to warmly thank you, our listener, for spending your time and energy learning with us today.
Learning the nuances of English is a long journey, and we are proud of the work you are putting in. Keep practicing these phrases, speak them slowly, clearly, and with genuine confidence.
Keep learning, keep growing, and keep making those steady deposits into your relationships. Goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.